Welcome back to A Book a Day podcast. And starting today, we are going to be doing a series on really erotic and exotic text called Kama Sutra. I know you're familiar with the name. And the first thing that comes to your mind when you read about it is sex. And yes, that is a part of it, but it goes much beyond that. And that's what we'll be discussing in this podcast. And over the next few episodes, what I'm going to do, I will be narrating certain important sections from the text, and we'll see what it is trying to say. Wherever things are a little complicated, where they need explanation, I will add my own understanding, interpretation, and explanations based on the different commentaries that I'm reading. But here in the episode, we are only going to be narrating the original text or the translation that has been done quite a number of times actually, but it's very straightforward text and doesn't really need a lot of explanations, but we'll see how that goes. So let's start without any delay. I will narrate right from the beginning what it is trying to say, who it is trying to address, and what this book is all about. And spoiler alert, it is all about how do we seek and consume our pleasures and how we can enhance that while living here and now. Although we would want to have a spiritual life, but while we are here in the human form, we are also pleasure-seeking creatures, and how we can have the best of this world in terms of pleasures. That's essentially what this text is all about. So let me narrate now, right at the start, and you'll get an idea what it is trying to say. Here we go. Starting with the book 1, on the acquisition of Dharma, Artha, and Kama. Man, the period of whose life is 100 years, should practice Dharma, Artha, and Kama at different times, and in such a manner that they may harmonize together and not clash in any way. He should acquire learning in his childhood, in his youth and middle age. He should attend to Artha and Kama, and in his old age he should perform Dharma and thus seek to gain moksha, that is, release from transmigration or nirvana or just spiritual liberation. Now at this point you might be thinking, what are Dharma, Artha, Kama? They will be explained in the matter of time, but very briefly, Dharma is really the spiritual learning and the righteous things based on the scriptures. Artha is the material possessions that we have, and Kama is really the pleasure aspects of it, the pleasure that we seek through our senses. And as I said, they will explain it in detail, but that's just the basic understanding. And Kama Sutra, right at the start, it is asking us to follow the spiritual practices, at the same time material possessions and the pleasures based on our senses. Now let's continue. Or, on account of the uncertainty of life, he may practice them at times when they are enjoined to be practiced. But one thing is to be noted, he should lead the life of a religious student until he finishes his education. Now here they're going to explain all these terms now. Dharma is obedience to the command of the Shastra or holy writ of the Hindus to do certain things, such as the performance of sacrifices, and not to do other things, such as eating meat. Dharma should be learnt from the Shruti, that is, holy writ, the divine words, and from those conversant with it. Artha is the acquisition of arts, land, gold, cattle, wealth, and friends. So all the material possessions, including people that we have in our lives, they are Artha. The things that we have, the absolute physical things that we surround ourselves with, that is Artha. It is further the protection of what is acquired and the increase of what is protected. So all that is required to protect and guard all these are material possessions. That's also part of artha. Artha should be learned from the king's officers and from merchants who may be versed in the ways of commerce. Now, kama is the enjoyment of appropriate objects by the five senses of hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling, assisted by the mind together with the soul. The ingredient in this is a peculiar contact between the organ of sense and its object, and the consciousness of pleasure which arises from that contact is called kama. So, quite straightforward, we derive pleasures from certain activities, we are smelling, we are tasting, and then it does something to our consciousness. There is a conscious experience of pleasure. And that pleasure essentially is being referred to as kama. Kama is to be learned from the Kama Sutra and from the practice of citizens. When all the three, that is dharma, artha and kama, come together, the former is better than the one which follows, which means dharma is better than artha and artha is better than kama. But artha should always be practiced by the king, for the livelihood of men is to be obtained from it only. And again, kama being the occupation of public women, they should prefer it to the other two, and these are exceptions to the rule. So the general rule is first priority should be dharma, the practice of religion, righteousness. Then comes artha, you acquire different material possessions, and then finally you seek pleasure. So first you evolve yourself spiritually, then you acquire possessions, and then you seek pleasure and derive pleasure in the most interesting and fascinating way through Kama Sutra. Now it's such a nice intellectual discourse here in Kama Sutra and much of the Indian philosophy is really about that they also come up with questions or objections that you might have at this point, and they also provide the answer. So it's just a way of asking really important intellectual question which really challenges your own assertions, and then you answer those challenges. So let me give you the examples here. The objection 1, they state here, it says that some learned men say that as dharma is connected with the things and not belonging to this world, it is appropriately treated of in a book. And so also is artha, because it is practiced only by the application of proper means, and a knowledge of those means can only be obtained by study and from books. But kama being a thing which is practiced even by the brute creation and which is to be found everywhere, does not want any work on the subject. And that's really a valid objection, and that's what we do essentially in our lives, don't we? We think that we need to study science and engineering. We do think that we need to understand the business of commerce, economics, but we rarely do we say that we have to learn the art of pleasure. We think it's just instinctive to us. Everybody does that. Every creature does that. So let's see what the answer here is. The answer says, this is not so. Sexual intercourse, being a thing dependent on man and woman, requires the application of proper means by them, and those means are to be learned from the Kama Shastra. The non-application of proper means, which we see in the brute creation, is caused by their being unrestrained and by the females among them only being fit for sexual intercourse at certain seasons and no more, and by their intercourse not being preceded by thought of any kind. So very briefly, the answer how important it is to understand in order to enjoy your life fully, in order to derive those pleasures fully. Now, there is another objection which has been articulated as below. Religious ordinances should not be observed, for they bear a future fruit, and at the same time it is also doubtful whether they will bear any fruit at all. What foolish person will give away that which is in his own hands into the hands of another? Moreover, it is better to have a pigeon today than a peacock tomorrow, and a copper coin which we have the certainty of obtaining is better than a gold coin, the possession of which is doubtful. And that point is also like valid even today. I remember this famous quote by Yuval Harari where he says that you cannot convince a monkey to give you a banana and promise the monkey that you're going to give him 100 or 1,000 or million or endless supply of bananas in heaven, in monkey heaven after his death. Monkey is never going to believe that. Only humans are stupid enough to believe that. And that argument has been articulated here brilliantly. Now let's see how Kama Sutra answers this very sound objection. It says, it is not so. First, Holy Writ, which ordains the practice of Dharma, does not admit of a doubt. So it says you really have to believe it. That's what the religion says. So that doesn't sound intellectually that strong of an argument. But let's see what are the other explanations they are giving. This is the second explanation. It says sacrifices such as those made for the destruction of enemies or for the fall of rain are seen to bear fruit. Again, I won't say a really sound intellectual argument. Let's see the third one. Third one says the sun, moon, stars, planets and other heavenly bodies appear to work intentionally for the good of the world. Okay. And the fourth one, it says the existence of this world is affected by the observance of the rules respecting the four classes of men and their four stages of life. Okay, fair enough. And fifth, we see that seed is thrown into the ground with the hope of future crops. Vatsyayana is therefore of opinion that the ordinances of religion must be obeyed. So he's strongly suggesting that we should follow the ordinances and the practices of religion, and we should stay within them and then seek pleasure, because social structures and everything that has been going on in certain way, it's not really trying to disrupt those structures. All it is saying is that let's stay within those structures and derive the maximum pleasure out of it. That's an interesting one if you think about it. It's not really debating the point of religion, whether it's true or not. It's saying that more about the convenience, more about, keeping the society intact and not really disrupting it, not really destroying it. And then within that framework, let's derive pleasures. Okay, move on to the objection 3, which says those who believe that destiny is the prime mover of all things say we should not exert ourselves to acquire wealth, for sometimes it is not acquired although we strive to get it, while at other times it comes to us of itself without any exertion on our part. Everything is therefore in the power of destiny, who is the lord of gain and loss, of success and defeat, of pleasure and pain. Thus we see the bali, or the sacrifice, was raised to the throne of Indra by destiny and was also put down by the same power, and it is destiny only that can reinstate him. First correction, it's not Bali, it's Bali. It's talking about the king who was raised through good luck. So the argument here is things just happen, right? Things happen to us, good things happen, bad things happen. There's not so much that is in our control. So what's the point of, just chasing things, doing things? It'll happen on its own. And that's also a sound argument that we hear even today, that if free will is not truly there, it just happens on its own, why should we do anything? Let's see the answer, what the text says. The answer is, it is not right to say so, as the acquisition of every object presupposes at all events some exertion on the part of the man. The application of proper means may be said to be the cause of gaining all our ends. And this application of proper means being thus necessary, it follows that a person who does nothing will enjoy no happiness. So clearly making this point of having this free will, saying that if you don't do anything, you won't find any happiness. You'll have to pursue it. That's how you achieve, that's how you cultivate it. If you do nothing, you won't find any happiness. That's the message here. Now, the next objection. Those who are inclined to think that artha is the chief object to be obtained argue this. Pleasures should not be sought for because they are obstacles to the practice of dharma and artha, which are both superior to them and are also disliked by meritorious persons. Pleasures also bring a man into distress and into contact with low persons. They cause him to commit unrighteous deeds and produce impurity in him. They make him regardless of the future and encourage carelessness and levity. And lastly, they cause him to be disbelieved by all, received by none, and despised by everybody, including himself. It is notorious, moreover, that many men who have given themselves up to pleasure alone have been ruined along with their families and relations. And that's also, I think, pretty much the accepted belief in our times that just if we just become hedonists, if we just start chasing pleasures, it does two things. One, it gets into the way of us seeking spiritual pleasures or spiritual enlightenment. It does come in the way. And second, it really, here on earth also, even the material life that we are living, it affects that also. We become careless, we just get indulged, we might get addicted. All those things can happen. So why should we pursue? Why should we study? Why should we focus on this aspect? Let's see what this text answers, how this text answers the question or the objection. It says, this objection cannot be sustained, for pleasures being necessary for the existence and well-being of the body as food are consequently equally required. They are moreover the results of dharma and artha. Pleasures are therefore to be followed with moderation and caution. No one refrains from cooking food because there are beggars to ask for it, or from sowing seed because there are deer to destroy the corn when it is grown up. Thus, a man practicing dharma, artha, and kama enjoys happiness both in this world and in the world to come. The good perform those actions in which there is no fear as to what is to result from them in the next world, and in which there is no danger to their welfare. Any action which introduces to the practice of dharma, artha, and kama together, or of any two, or even one of them, should be performed, but an action which conduces to the practice of one of them at the expense of the remaining two should not be performed. And that's really a brilliant point. One, it is saying the pleasure seeking has to be done in a moderate way. There has to be caution. And that really kind of adds to the point that there has to be more organized and systematic study to it. You cannot just leave it to instincts. Otherwise, it's going to be bad for you. And second thing, it is making this point again that if it does affect your spiritual practice, then you should take caution. You should take a step back. So always keep that in mind. First, you have to have that spiritual ambitions, pursuit. You should do it. Then the material possessions, and then the pleasures that you derive from those possessions. So in that order, you should always follow it. And clearly, as I said earlier, clearly the intention here is not really to disrupt the society, not really to disrupt the already existing structures. It is to stay with them, follow them, and then from them, living a life full of joy and happiness and pleasures, and derive our pleasures in a healthy way, in a really intimate, interesting, exotic way, but ensuring at the end of the day you are in good health, you're pursuing your spirituality, and that has been the ultimate goal of Indian philosophy all along. So that just fits right into the overall flow of Indian text, Indian philosophy. That there is a place for spirituality, there is a place for living a normal life of a citizen, having those material possessions, and on top of that, deriving pleasures, enjoying life here and now, and at the same time having those ambitions of having a spiritual path which takes you towards enlightenment and ensures all your goals towards afterlife. So that's just the first chapter we did. And you would have got the glimpse of how philosophical this text is, how reasonable this is. It just makes sound arguments, and it's very easy, very straightforward text. It's not difficult to understand, but I will help you wherever things get a bit tricky, wherever context is a bit different based on different societies. So I will help you with that, but otherwise it's a very straightforward, very simple text, and it really helps you to enjoy this world in a better way. So I will leave you with that, and I'll catch you in the next episode with the next chapter. Keep listening, and I hope you'll enjoy this series. Thank you.